ion pump cells. And what they do is they have to get rid of the ammonia in the blood. So the ammonia is pumped out of the blood into the water. And then, but because it's ionized, it has to exchange one positive ion for a similar positive ion. In this particular case, it takes ammonia, it pumps it out, it brings sodium in. Okay? This is the exchange where it happens. However, as we go up into the afternoon, NH4 becomes NH3, increases of pH and temperature during the course of the day. So we start getting the formation of all this NH3 out here in the environment. Well, take a look at this. So we've got an ion here, and because ions cannot be actively, it has to be actively pumped back and forth across the gill. This is an energy mechanism, and it's a one-way flow through these specialized cells. So NH4 cannot just go back into the fish very easily. However, the NH3 is not ionized. Now we're going to start getting into a little chemistry here. Not very complicated, but because it doesn't have an ion on it, it can freely flow across the gill membrane just like oxygen and carbon dioxide. Because it doesn't have an ion, it's going to go from an area of low concentration, from high concentration to low concentration until you get an equilibrium. Okay? So then all of a sudden we start getting all this NH4 that's building up in the blood. The ammonia is starting to now, not only is the fish building it up from breakdown of the protein, but now all of a sudden it's starting to come back in from the water and starting to build up even higher. And they don't have enough mechanisms in order to get it pumped back out into the environment, because this is going to come right back in.
So it becomes NH4 when it gets in?
Yeah. Until especially if you start getting pH problems in the pond, that can also start increasing the blood pH. Because the fish only have a certain blood carrying capacity or blood buffering capacity. If the pH in the water starts going up too high, that can also start raising the pH in the blood as well. But by this time, this stuff, regardless,
are not eating. Then I ask them, how are the behavior? Are they slow? No, they are not slow. They are active, but they are not eating. Then we're like, if they are active, they will eat now. We're not going to take water quality and everything. We're not find out that.
yeah.
Again,
Yeah,
it
it's
depends on how
species
long it lasts.
dependent.
But
Yeah.
the Aquarius are less sensitive.
Right.
Okay? So it's hard for, I've looked all through the literature. There are some reports, but they forget to announce the pH when they did the total ammonia, so you can throw those in the trash. Okay? But you can, there's some indication, and even from our experience, that they can go up around 2 milligrams per liter unionized. So I'd like to put this chart up that shows how much is unionized. And this is a simple one, and then we'll give you the.
Yeah, let me get through this part and then we'll ship it out. So, the reason, what happens inside the animal, again, it's like our kidneys failing. And a lot at the biochemical cell level, exactly what it's doing is not very well understood. But for the most part, what we think is happening is, at the cell sites, especially in the mitochondria, which we call the powerhouse of the cells. That's where all of our energy is made and comes from. It starts interfering with the production of energy. All right? It also starts heavily affecting brain function. So we start seeing significant impacts to the nervous system. And then also, it will start causing some osmotic disturbances because we've got all this ionized compound right here in it, and it starts throwing off their ion balance in the blood. Well, that's going to make further disturbances in the cells and other problems. Circulatory system, heart function, kidney function, all down at a cellular level. So this is where it starts becoming a real problem, and a lot of times we don't, oftentimes we'll see the exact impacts on the animal, unless it's through especially growth rates. One of the other things, whenever we start seeing it going on for a long period of time, it will start causing a swelling of the gills. Hypertrophy, hyperplasia, those are two different types of swelling that can happen in the gills. And so not only do you get an influx of a lot of blood there, the gills will start swelling. You also get a lot of mucus production. And again, all this is happening at the gill site where we're needing water to come through, flow through to help get rid of all this. But now all of a sudden we've got this swelling that's happening, we've got mucus that's blocking the water flow across the lamellae. Are our gills now functioning correctly? No. They're not. These fish are not happy. You know, that's the thing we want. We want happy fish. These fish are getting real sad, real quick. So that's when we really start seeing significant stress. We start seeing the impacts on growth, and especially with disease susceptibility. Yes?
Yeah, so I just wanted to get a lot of things you said, right? So generally in the morning, if I go to my phone to check ammonia, I'm probably going to see a lot of energy falls there. And then, but then normally in the morning, you say that the energy fall would be converted. In the morning, it will be converted by the energy into the water, so from the part of the fish into the environment. But then you said the energy, ionized energy will go back into the soil. You mentioned
No, okay, yeah, because under normal circumstances, this is the normal function right here. They get rid of ammonia, but they bring sodium back in. Okay? That's the normal function. The problem is when the ammonia gets out here in the environment, and as more and more of it is being produced by the fish because we're increasing our feeding rates, you know, all these fish, the pond is overstocked, we're feeding way too much. These fish are generating a lot of ammonia right there. So the ammonia in the environment is really building up. It's going up from morning to afternoon. That's when we see the conversion of this ammonia in this ionized form to the unionized form. And that's when it has the ability to start coming back into the animal.
So the sodium that goes back to the fish which is going to be a regular activity. During this point in time in the afternoon, let's say like from the 2 to 4, what happens to that sodium? Is it because now the fish are getting sodium again?
Well, there's different cellular processes that use sodium. You know, just like in us, it's involved in heart function, it's involved in muscle function. all cellular mechanisms use sodium as part of that to maintain an ion balance, and they'll actually utilize it for energy production, other biochemical processes. Now, I think I might know where you might be heading with this. Could we increase the amount of sodium in the pond or in the water to help alleviate, maybe some stress? Yeah, we could. Hence the whole reason for salting fish down to eliminate stress. Makes it easier for them to find the sodium to bring across and push that ammonia out. Yes.
Because the lack of it is now the lack of that sodium, which is supposed to help in the other function of the organs.
Yes. Yes.
Especially for fresh water.
Yeah.
So that's why, when we say adding a certain amount of salt to transport water to relieve stress, the work they have to do to maintain their osmotic balance.
Yeah, see, this right here, this cell right here requires energy. And so if they're constantly having to do this, we can make it easier for them to bring sodium in, to find it, have it bind to it, and bring it across. They don't expend as much energy. That energy, instead of going to trying to hunt down these ions out here in the water, can actually be used inside the body for tissue placement, growth. All right, that's a big thing. Is right there is, you've got an energy balance in the animal. Now, is it going to be going to trying to fight off pathogens, diseases, ion balance, all this other stuff, or do you really want it to go to laying down new tissue, new muscle tissue, growth of the animal? It's a trade-off. And the more that we can eliminate the stress and have them all this, extra stress that's happening on the fish and expending that energy over here, let's put it where we're ideally wanting it to be.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Now, in summary, what it means is that the pH and the temperature.
I'm sorry. Let me get back here. I can't hear.
It means in summary, the pH and the temperature is actually a factor that determines what happens
Yep.
to the ammonium and the ammonia.
Yep.
That's the time.
Yep.
So once we can keep the pH appropriately at a normal level, well, we don't have control over temperature. Well,
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
Depending on your production system, you've got a lot of
Okay,
control
okay,
over that.
that's true. So that means that this ammonia poisoning,
The pH is more of an influence than temperature.
Yeah.
if it happens, and you notice that that is happening, because the only way we can know now what we have is the time, and maybe the time of the day. Once you stop feeding.
Oh, yeah, that's my second slide I have.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
let me just wait for that.
Yeah.
Can I put this up now?
Yep.
Stop feeding first.
So,
Guys, these are great questions. Great questions. Yeah, you're
you got your
you're catching.
pick
Water feeding,
right
yeah.
on the, on the.
No, but yes,
It will reduce.
but sometimes
From the previous base of feeding to reduce.
yeah, that's ammonia. Yeah, that's good. But if you do feed it, the water gravity high, reduce the water and feed by temporary, give some results by temporary.
One of my students, in Cambodia, went online and got something, and we had to adjust it because they were doing it for different water temperatures, but he made up a table. So it's for 30 degrees Celsius temperature, okay? And a lot of people are around that, that's why we chose that temperature. This here is the total ammonia nitrogen that you would measure with wearable kits, okay? Total, NH equals NH4. This part over here is the pH. The numbers in the squares is the amount of unionized toxic ammonia. At that pH, 30 degrees, and at that pH, with this total ammonia. So, 30 And then, so we're using about 0.04 to be the best toxic amount. And depending on the literature, it's usually 0.5 to 2 as toxic. And it just depends on how fast the fish are going to die too. But we're using 0.5 here, but it tells you what the real number is. Okay? So if your pH is 7 or lower, you can go up to 2 milligrams per liter without noticeable effects. Everything has some effect. But, and so we call that, safe from the fish farmer's standpoint. The yellow is you're starting to get some stress. So you see at 7, it has to be pretty high for you to get the stress zone. But at pH 9, you're almost never even in the stress zone. You're a little bit worse, okay? So, and then at pH, you didn't go up to 10, but at pH 9, you don't need much ammonia for you to be in the toxic zone for certain species. Tilapia are sensitive to ammonia, by the way. Okay? So this allows you roughly to figure out where you are in that chart. Okay? If you want to have exact numbers, then you can use one of the apps, and you put in temperature, you put in pH, and your total ammonia, and it will give you the toxic amount. Then you have to figure out how toxic is it. Yeah.
If the water coming from my pond is around 5.5 or the beach, what happens?
Well, you should be worried about carbon dioxide then.
I'm not worried about ammonia then.
No.
It,
Even at
ammonia.
6. I would recommend you try to get it that CO2. There's always a problem somewhere, okay?
Even at like pHs of 7, there's very little toxic ammonia
See,
at 30 degrees.
it's a couple percent, like 1 or 2% of the ammonia is toxic, so it's not that much, okay? Yeah.
So if I understand that, the pH level determines how
No, it determines what percent of that ammonia is toxic. Okay?
so the higher the pH.
The more toxic. You see this? We're going here. We have to say total ammonia of 1, and it doesn't get quite toxic until you're in this zone. Okay? pH of 10, you're barely safe. Or ammonia of 10, you're safe if the pH is 7 or lower, but you start getting not safe really fast when the pH is high.
And I'm going to show you the chart here in just a minute that shows you how to calculate this.
Yeah. I'll show you the chart. Some people have trouble using it, but there's a really easy app where you just punch in the numbers. You have to be online. Okay. Yeah. At that time. Okay. So let me just show you what the second thing. When you have high ammonia. So remember, when it's more than 10, it becomes more and more toxic as your pH goes from 8 and higher. Okay? There's very few options that you have. Number 1, stop feeding. Okay? Number 2, change water. Okay? And if you know you have high ammonia and your DO isn't that high, if it's not super saturated, let's say it's 4, and I've seen this a lot of times in the afternoon. The pH can be high, but the DO is still 4 because we have a super high oxygen demand in the water. Then you really want to aerate to at least make it easier for the fish to get that oxygen across all that mucus on the gills. So what water has these high fluctuations in pH? It can get really high pHs. Is that low alkalinity water. Liberia, Sierra Leone. If your water looks like tea with no milk in it, it's a high possibility that you have low alkalinity.
Yeah, but it last month, because all these things are like the soil we have is asking to this, like in the north and the south, these are the places we have the high humidity problem. But like we hardly get except in the mining area.
You hardly get what?
We hardly get groundwater.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
only in the mining area, like I'm sure.
Yeah. So, we get a lot of outflow from kind of jungle, overgrown areas. You don't get that, the high canopy in the water.
And it's happening most of the time.
Luckily here, you guys have that very low pH. So I measure pHs in the low 5s and 4s. That is the pH that's dangerous. So that's the problem with those fish. They tell you that your ammonia is toxic, but you can be killing your fish with low pH. Okay? And your ammonia looks fine because you can hardly get the toxicity in low pH. So you want kind of a happy point. For tilapia, I would use 6.5 to 7. And clarius, you can sometimes go a little lower, but that's kind of a same point, provided your patient is fluctuating during the day. All right, this is a typical one. And I think this is in the blue publication that you put out before. I think I haven't seen it.
Yeah, actually, I think I got this from the Strack publication, but it's the same one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing. But I downloaded it or got it off the Strack one.
But I think for the temperature, I got this one, I don't know how to do this. I think the different ponds, they had the lower the influence of the temperature. Because most of our ponds that are moderate and during cold weather, in the cold weather here, we still have the intake. Most of those ponds will maintain their normal intake. So one depth is a bit this is all like I mean phase of temperature is a bit lower.
If your water depth, in our experience, if your water depth is ½ meter or less, you're going to have these high fluctuations. And as we get more, so in some areas in dry season, your water depth will go down. And if you're talking to people over distant, don't ask them how deep is their pond, because they calculate from where you stand on the levee down to the pond line. And they could have a freeboard like that. So you ask them how deep is the water in your pond. Yeah.
One of the depths is
That's why we have that idea about a meter, meter and a half. Yeah, less than a meter, we actually see lower carrying capacity. Okay.
So, these, especially like some of these plastic tanks, tarpaulin tanks, during your hot season, they can have extreme temperature variability. They can heat up very fast because all the sides are exposed, and typically there's no insulation. So you're getting heat penetration only from the sides, but down also. So you can have a lot of temperature variation from the morning to the afternoon, which is going to affect this. Not to mention the things that we discovered or talked about yesterday with, hyperthermia, hypothermia. Those are issues in themselves, but all of a sudden now we've got another factor that could come into play affecting fish health, especially based on that kind of production system setup.
Oh, Jeff. So in Kenya, sometimes I would have to teach a class on identifying protozoans and things on fish. And in order to generate that, not very good for animal welfare, but we knew that that if you harvest some Clarius fingerlings, and you put them in a bucket of water, and you happen to leave it out in the sun that afternoon, and then you hurry them in, dump it quick in your holding tank with running water that's cold, the next day, they have like 5 different parasites, just loaded. Okay, yeah.
John,
Doesn't take long. And people do that all the time, you
Yeah.
know? They're picking up those last fish in the pond or something like that. They're sitting out in the sun for like 3 hours. And, yeah. They're just asking for trouble, yeah.
I have that with my students, and I don't know what happens, but after harvesting, they go for break tea.
Oh.
And now usually break tea is like 3 hours. And then, so that's what happens, and then they'll tell you different stories. But that's very common. So in transporting, you have to be very careful. That's very interesting.
It's easier for you to go do your break, leave the fish out, but it's always the worst thing for the fish. Okay? So you have to think like you're the fish, not like you're the worker. What does the fish need? You can wait for the tea break. Yeah. I don't even let my people take lunch when we're transporting fish. They gotta carry it with them. Okay?
Okay, so Karen gave you that chart to show you how, it can go from a safe level to a dangerous level. That's, nice color coded. But I also want to show you why that is. So, across the top here, we've got our temperature. We got it going all the way down to 6 degrees Celsius. Fortunately, you don't see that because of other reasons, but from a ammonia standpoint, it helps a lot. But we've got temperatures over here, 24 to 30. You can find these charts that will go on up to 36, 40 degrees even. Okay, this one specifically comes from what we call the SRAC, the Southern Regional Aquaculture Centers, the technical bulletins that they put out. And if you look at it, so what this is, these are the numbers that gives you the percent of unionized ammonia in your overall TAN level. I'll repeat that. It's the percent of unionized ammonia in your TAN amounts.
Total ammonia nitrogen.
Of your total ammonia nitrogen. And so, if you're coming across on temperature, we see, like if you're down here at 22 degrees at a pH of 7.0, it only goes from almost 0.005% if we increase it to 0.008%. Not very much of a change on temperature-wise. But let's take a look at the pH. As we go pH, as it increases, going from 7 down to 10. Remember yesterday, or in the last couple of days, we've been telling you, pH, every point change in pH is a 10 times fold increase. Okay? We've got a pH right here. Let's take it at pH of 7 at 30 degrees. 0.008% of your total ammonia nitrogen is in the unionized form. If we go down to 8, we go from 0.008 to 0.07, a 10 times increase.
Wow.
If we go down to 9, we go from 0.048 to 0.44, another 10 times increase. Over half, at this point right here, at a pH of 9 at 30 degrees, almost half of your total ammonia nitrogen is already in the unionized form. If we jump it down to 10, it goes from 0.44 to to 0.88, almost 100%, almost 90% of it is in the unionized form. So if our morning pH is, say, 7, and we've got poorly buffered ponds, our alkalinities are like 10 or 20. But we got a really thick algae bloom on it, where we're going to see the extreme pH cycles happening. We could easily go from virtually no unionized ammonia to extremely high parts. Wilbert?
So, in a typical hatchery, where we are expected to have the optimum temperature between 3 to 8 to, let's say, 30, 31, 32. And you may find your pH to be around 7 to 7.5 to 7.8. During the sun, so it's okay, you can manage. But usually we forget that at a pH of 7.8, when you map it to 30,
Yeah.
for the first 3 days, you don't have a problem. But when you start feeding very high protein diets at 66% or 62%, in the first 1 week, you may end up getting 0.4 something. Then your first start dying, and you have to start complaining. What's happening?
What do you are doing close to that?
You are doing flow through, but where is your solids?
Yeah, you have to
Living.
Yeah.
So the psychology is very consistent.
Yeah.
Make sure that
Part of that nitrogen is in the solids,
Yeah.
it does you well to get rid of them.
And keep in mind, we were talking about kind of differences in the species. You know, Claris not as sensitive as tilapia to ammonia, but also keep in mind it's life stage dependent.
Good.
The larvae are extremely sensitive to it. Okay, that's a whole nother level. Again, a fish this size is not the same as a fish this size. Same species. Completely different animal.
That's it.
Okay? So, just to kind of run through a calculation using this, let's say we've got a tan of 8. We measure our pH. We've got 9.0. Our temperature is at 30 degrees. So the question is, what is our unionized amount in this particular situation? So get out your calculator. So we take our tan number, 8. We look on our chart at a pH of 9. Our temperature is at 30. So we've got 0.4453 times 8. What do we got?
3.5624.
Say again?
3.5624.
3.56. At this point, are our fish stressed? Significantly. And depending on our life stage, they might even be dead. If we've moved a bunch of larvae out, 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we've got high ammonia because we've been fertilizing. So this is the way you would do these, you would run these calculations. Now, I've put up this chart right here to show you how to come up with these calculations. Why it's important, why each of these factors are important. Because we don't see much of a change with temperature, but the pH you're seeing, every time that we go up a point in pH, it's 10 times higher toxicity levels of the ammonia. Does everybody see that? Do we need to run through another calculation?
Yes.
So, sorry.
So they didn't answer the question about the fish being
Josephine.
stressed. If you had a copy of the chart though, that exact number is on here.
Yeah.
It has a certain color code.
Yes.
Yes.
Josephine made mention.
I'm going to get that slide.
Yeah,
Good,
I
good
just
thing.
put it together on.
Yeah, we're going to send this out. We're going to send it out.
And yeah, I had a conversation with Josephine. And she was saying that in her country, you have issues with the country because the temperatures are usually low, between 22 to 24.
Are you getting that low?
And Josephine.
Yes.
We didn't get that low in Rwanda, and it just
And I'm-
makes it more trouble.
And I'm saying if the water is good and you are getting pH around 7 or even 6.8 and all other things are okay, wouldn't this be a good situation for them than we get?
Yes. It's just that the problem with the low temperature, you make sure you don't follow a feed chart that's made for 30 degrees, number one.
Okay.
And because you're probably feeding 25% about that's on that feed chart. So be very careful watching the fish. Number two, it takes you longer. So the longer it takes to grow something, the higher risk you have of a problem. Okay? Probably, if they're not handled carefully, more opportunity for fungus. If you scrape the mucus when you're handling or something.
Oh, when at lower temperatures? Yeah.
And it got thick. If it comes in, then it can really cause you a lot of losses. So at least lower 20 degrees Celsius, that ichthyopteris parasite can cause a lot of problems.
There's quite a few other protozoan parasites that really like that lower temperature, that 20 to 24 degrees.
Yeah.
They really like those lower temperatures.
So you have the option to heat your water up a little bit or run it through like a silver heater or something, or just deal with it. Yeah. Be real careful.
All right, so we got, let's put up another scenario. Let's say we measure our TAN number, it's at 15 parts per million, which is not unheard of. Easy. Our pH is 8.4. Our temperature is at 26 degrees. Now, what is our unionized ammonia amount? How do we do it? Somebody walk me through it. You're the consultant now. I've told you, I'm just Joe Farmer.
Yeah.
What? Have I got a problem here? I don't understand any of this. What do I do? Are my fish safe? Are they stressed? Are they on the verge? You instruct me. Tell me. What am I supposed to do?
Very high.
Okay. Come up here. Come up here. Come here. Come here. Come up here and write it down. You, Wilfred, come on up here. Come on. Come on. You're the consultant. Come here. Explain to me what happens. Explain to these folks what happens. How do we do this?
No, you take the 15
All right,
and
so
you multiply by.
15. So write our 15 down. 15 times what? Now, how do we read our chart?
Okay. Do you, let's,
Go ahead. You've got, you're working it. 8.4.
if 10 is this, 15 will be that, then we
Okay, so 13 or 0.1326 is our factor.
Alright, those can you calculate it for them? Equals, oh yeah. Is that dot in the middle, the decimal point?
Yeah, right there.
Alright.
Yeah. So we've got now 1.98. But think about it. A while ago, we only had 8 parts per million. We've almost doubled the amount of total ammonia nitrogen, but we've got half as much of unionized ammonia here because of the change in our temperature and the change in our pH. So,
And it's still pretty toxic.
and it's still in a toxic range. It's still in a stress range for sure. But see how these factors, how fast these factors can change depending on your numbers. Ideally we want 0. Ideally. Yeah.
Zero, yeah, 0.
Yeah. What? So this would be like 15 milligrams per liter, 26 degrees C. And then that would be 1.9 milligrams per liter.
Or it could be ammonia nitrogen
So in this case, what do we do? Have that.
That's the next slide.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay, so now, the reason why I wanted to walk you through this chart is so that you understood and you can see how the values change with pH and temperature. Now, I just sent via WhatsApp a link to a calculator that you can plug this information in and come up with the same thing. But if you're with a client, I want you to be able to understand how to go through this and what these numbers really mean. That's why we put this chart up here, is to go through the meanings behind it. That, you know, yeah, we could easily pull out this number right here, but then all we're doing is getting a snapshot. You need to be able to explain to the client, well, what happens, you know, this pH was in the morning time, your calculation runs it here. Well, what if the pH goes up, continues to go up, temperatures go up during the afternoon? I want you to be able to show them and work out on the chart right here, instead of just running it through a calculator.
Sorry, using the calculator here.
Well, do they not have it?
Yes, it's giving a higher.
Are they giving it a higher number?
Yes, let's check.
What do they say on the?
What do they say on the app, on this app? Now, this is Mississippi State, so I kind of question some of them.
I sent some Iman a message saying, thank you for sending that student, she's very good. He says, of course, I always send my good students to Auburn. The bad ones I send to Mississippi State.
Like in this case now, I got 2.4. I gave 1.99.
2.4?
Yeah. What I have here is total ammonia nitrogen, that's 15. Temperature 17.8, that's 26 degrees.
Did they put their temperature in Fahrenheit?
Oh, yeah,
I put it in Fahrenheit.
That's why you should.
I changed it from centigrade to Fahrenheit.
Oh, you might have done that.
There might be just a little bit of a difference right there.
But the other one that Kalagi and I use is in Celsius.
Yeah, it's in Celsius. We'll try. I sent that out. You can use it, but again, it is in English units. I would find another one. But I wanted to just put it out there as an example that these calculators are out there online to use. But that's kind of how it works. All it does is you plug the numbers in and it gives you a number. I wanted you to walk through this chart. That's the main purpose behind it.
Let me see if I can send out the one WhatsApp here.
This 4 figure table, oh sorry, this
Did you say, when you plug that temperature in, did you say you use 74 degrees Fahrenheit?
I used 78.8.
Okay, 78.8, that's a little bit high. Because if you do a conversion from Celsius to Fahrenheit at 26, okay, yeah. I was using 74. Yeah, you're running right at 80 degrees. Yeah.
Well, it's giving to a
Right.
2.4.
Now, excuse me, for some of us that are running a recirculate 3 system, what I normally do is that is the pH that I monitor a lot.
Say that again now.
I think some of us that are using RAS, recirculatory system, what you normally should do is your pH, even without checking the tank, you can use the pH to monitor your system. Now,
Well, that's not going to tell you what the ammonia is.
but just because in the RAS, the moment you begin to happen the fry, once the pH is going up, you know that the ammonia is also.
Yeah.
So to prevent that, you may just release 10% of the water every day. And then add 10%. So you may not
back flushing.
Yeah.
Then back flushing.
Yes,
When you back flush your sedimentation,
yes.
once you refill your sedimentation, it automatically affects the system.
So you're on track. You're on track with, what do you do now? And depending on the type of system that you have, is your management strategies there of trying to mitigate this. Okay? So if you have the capability, say in a tank, a RAS, exchange water. Get rid of the ammonia, flush it out. Like Karen said the other day, it's like a toilet. We urinate, we pee in a toilet. What are we doing? We're getting rid of urea, which is a toxic form of ammonia. It's less toxic, but that's what we're doing. We're going to flush the toilet right here. So water exchange. Now, how difficult is that to do in a pond? Depends on the size of the pond and your water source. The other day Sunday, I showed you some pictures of some 5 to 8 hectare sized ponds.
Everything went white.
No, we're not going to have a water exchange on that. There's no way. Not fast enough, for sure. If you've got certain tanks in aquaria, you can add zeolite. That's a compound that will bind the ammonia. To a certain point, then you have to get the zeolite and recharge it. Okay? You can add this also in transport bags or transport tanks to help during transport.
How do you recharge the zeolite? Recharge the zeolite.
Salt.
Salt. Normal salt. Yeah. Normal salt.
We use this for emergencies, especially.
But zeolite is fairly expensive and sometimes very hard to find. So oftentimes it's not a very practical treatment. Unless it's something that you're using on a constant basis and you find that source and you keep it on hand. But you've got to figure out, what your cost is and where it fits into your management strategy. Is it worth using or not? I'm not saying that it should or should not be used. I'm just saying under some circumstances it might be appropriate to use.
So I made a zeolite scrubber that replacing filter with a zeolite in it, and I had it on a wagon. I call it the fish emergency thing, and then we had a lot of recirculating systems, so you could go in real quick if needed to and scrub that water. Okay, but we could get zeolite by the big bag. That's why it worked.
Sorry, question again for the colleague. Replacing 25 to 50% of the water change. Would that stress the fish?
Would it what? Stress?
Changing 25% to 50% at once.
All at once, it depends on how fast and depends on the water chemistry difference.
Yes, yes, this is better.
So you don't want to go much over 50% on a change, on a quick change, especially for okay.
I think
Yeah,
the
so,
second link that Folabi sent gave us a better calculation.
Okay, all right, okay.
It was exactly what we
Okay.
got.
yeah.
Well, the link that I gave you come from John Domazoro, so blame him. Flavi is much better.
So, all right, let's keep going on these, because people are going to talk to you about all of these, but there's different practicalities
Yeah.
for each of them.
So I really need to kind of have this sort of flipped around, but
Yeah.
I want to go down here to nitrifying bacteria, biological filtration.